Welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. This is episode 57, believe it or not. For those of you joining us for the first time, this is a weekly live stream here on YouTube. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid, and we talk about BIM, Revit, and anything really adjacent and related. It's a calm, cool, relaxing show where we like to drink cocktails, so let us know in the chat what you're drinking tonight. But yeah, we have an awesome episode for you today. Josh Radle is here, and we're going to introduce him in a little bit, but we're going to be talking about the new release of Enscape and some of the awesome new features. If you guys aren't familiar with the new release of Enscape, there's some really cool things, especially for a point release, some big things on materials, which we'll talk about and we'll get to later, so stick around for that. Thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. As usual here on the live stream, I will be checking out the chat. And so feel free to ask questions, heckle, do whatever you want. We will be checking out the chat and seeing what's going on. Before we jump into the content today, I am actually going to start off with our BIM Big Bad BIM Tip of the week. And so we're gonna roll that sound clip. And this is submitted by a user. So let's kick it off right now. The Big Bad BIM Tip of the week. So, ironically, or coincidentally, I should say, this segment is sponsored by Enscape. And so normally I would go through the process of telling you guys all about what Enscape is, but we're going to go through that for an hour. So if you're interested throughout this entire episode, head on over to enscape.bimafterdark.com, get a 14-day free trial, jump in and start today. I promise you it's worth it. So the Big Bad BIM Tip of the Week is a weekly tip submitted by you, the viewers of this show. So thank you for those who have submitted a bunch of tips already. And any tip I choose will be getting a free t-shirt. So make sure you shoot me an email. Let me know what your favorite BIM tip is of the week that you'd like to share with the audience. So I'm actually going to jump right in and show you the tip today. The tip today is actually from Dan. And Dan, oops, let me go to my screen here. Dan, I apologize, I don't have your last name, but you'll remember once I show you this tip. And shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll send you a t-shirt. This tip has to do with stacked walls. Anyone who's familiar with stacked walls knows they're a nightmare. What is a stacked wall? It is multiple walls stacked on top of each other. And so here's a stacked wall. If I go to edit type and I go into structure, you'll see it's actually two different wall types stacked on top of each other. So they have their purposes, but they can be a pain in the butt. I have two stacked walls right here. So the tip that Dan had is something I actually completely forgot about until recently. When you build a stacked wall, once you're done building it, if you right click the stacked wall, you can actually click where it says break up. And what does that do? That actually breaks it into 3 or 4 or 2, however many individual walls, and it maintains all of their instance and level parameters, which is pretty freaking awesome. So Dan, thanks for submitting that. I was just sitting there and thinking about it. Where could this be kind of useful? And a perfect example is right here. This is a residential typical condition where you've got a 12-inch foundation wall. You got a 6-inch stud, and so you can just sit there and you can draw your exterior walls however you want. And then once you're done, you can simply click your walls, right click and break up, and now you have a foundation wall and a stud wall. Pretty cool. I thought it was pretty neat. And so thank you, Dan, for the tip. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I completely forgot that even existed, so thanks for reminding me. And Dan, shoot me an email. So if you have a tip that you want to share with the audience and you want a free t-shirt, feel free to shoot me an email, jeff@therevitkid.com. Awesome. So that was our Big Bad BIM Tip of the Week, sponsored by Enscape. Speaking of Enscape, I think it's about time. Sorry, Josh, you've been waiting a little while, but we're going to bring you in now. Josh, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. Longtime fan of the show.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, Josh, you work for Enscape, but
correct.
But I think it would be important for folks to understand a little bit of your background. So maybe tell folks here,
sure.
How you got to be where you are today with Enscape.
Awesome. So I've been in the industry for about 6 years now. I went to school for visual effects and motion graphic and video game design. So I loved creating all things visual. So huge nerd. Then I got on with an Autodesk reseller where I headed up our visualization and hardware department. So I did trainings, consulting, support, research and development across all different visualization programs on the market. we're a reseller of Enscape as well. Then I ended as a senior product manager for BIMbox Computers. I'm actually with right now. We were at the Contact Crew Roadshow. So hanging out the BIMbox booth with Buck, demoing Enscape on a BIMbox.
Awesome.
But yeah, and then after I left ATG, now I find myself here at Enscape since November of last year.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've been a huge fan of Enscape. Anyone who's watched this show or even read my blog over the last 5 to 6 years, it's one of those programs, and you and I were talking even a little bit before that I actually first used it. It was a 0-point release, so it was beta, I guess, at that point in time. And I remember, I think even at the 1 point something release, it was a little unstable, but over time it got better. But the one thing that, and it's completely different now, I will tell you that it's completely stable now. but that's what kind of drew me away for a second. But the one thing I always loved about Enscape is the updates and the releases and the features are always very user based. And us all being Revit users, we know what it feels like to have wish lists for 10 plus years on some things and never get them done. And I feel like with Enscape, wish list items that are clearly valuable to the folks who are using the program usually get implemented. And no different with 3.0, but also with 3.1, which we're going to talk about quite a bit today. And so I appreciate that to the Enscape folks. And because of that, it's always, whenever there's a new release, I like to try and have someone come on and talk about it who's, intimately knowledgeable of the software, but also usually it's a major release that I'll have folks come on for. So 2.0, 3.0, et cetera. But the one thing I will say is that for a point release, so this is 3.1, there is a couple features, but one that's huge for us in the Revit world. So I'm super excited to let everyone here on the live stream know about that. I want to remind everyone again, I'm seeing the chats come in. Hey guys, Rick, we got Junior Rick, some folks from Australia. What's up?
Oh, cool.
9 p.m. works really well for my Australian contingent. So, well, you're welcome, guys.
I'm still getting used to the time zone, talking with people in Australia. Like, still getting used to it.
I'll never get it right. I don't know what it is. I can't figure out. New Zealand and Australia. Sorry, guys, but I can never get a call set up with you guys correctly. It is what it is. So thank
Love
you guys
too.
Yeah. So feel free to ask questions to myself or Josh. I'll be keeping on an eye on the chat. And so, Josh, I guess let's jump right into it. And
Right.
Maybe we'll start with a little demo for people who don't really know what Enscape is. We don't have to go into all the details, but maybe just give them a quick, brief overview of sort of what it is, and then we can talk about, for those who maybe are familiar with Enscape in general, talk about 3.0 and then 3.1, and we'll work through it that way.
Okay, perfect. All right. So for those who don't know, Enscape's a real-time rendering engine plugin that once you install it, it's up top of your ribbon up here. So you have to start with the 3D model first to get that into Enscape. And all you got to do is simply hit the plus button or play button right there. And then whatever you have inside of the Revit model is going to be shown in here in Enscape. You will get this little helpful tooltip that pops up here. So if you play a computer video game, WASD keys just move around, shift and right mouse click to change the time of day. So now you can see what your model looks like at all the different times of the day. Super powerful, really good to showcase clients what it's going to look like at all the different times of the day. Well, that's great. But where the real benefit comes in is anything I'm changing inside of the Revit model. Say I'm deleting trees, like if I delete this tree right here, we can see how fast that's instantly going to update. Changing materials, basically doing a design review at this point. So as fast as you can change things in the model, Enscape's going to show you instantaneously. That's where the real power comes in, because a lot of times when we're doing a design review, a client can't really look at a floor plan and see what the model is going to look like in their head. They can't think in 3D. So that's where having Enscape open on one window. I'm just working off my laptop right now, so that's why I have it split screen. But normally we have Enscape open on a big window and changing things. Clients are seeing it update in real time. So
hold on, Josh, before we jump forward, let's do something real quick. If you want to stop screen sharing and re-screen share, but check the little box for improve video, I think we'll get a little bit smoother of a video feed. I'm getting a little lag on your end, and that usually helps. So let's jump.
How's that now?
Oh, much better, much better. It usually what it does is it'll make the words on like Revit a little fuzzy for you guys. I'm sorry, but it's much better to see smoother movement. That's 100 times better. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, awesome.
I don't know why it's not defaulted like that on Zoom, honestly.
Right. Yep. Feature request for Zoom.
Yeah, right.
So, all right. So back in back in March of last year, Enscape went through a whole new revamp. So previous users, I remember seeing like a yellow icon, and a lot of things that we had inside the Enscape render window, those were inside of the Revit window. So once we released 3.0, we went through a new revamp of our logo, and then we moved some icons around. So a lot of things that were over inside of the Revit window are now over here inside of the Enscape window, like our visual settings tab. That's all over here now. This is where you can still change things like the different modes, the different atmosphere settings. Again, that setting that was inside of Revit, that's all over here in the Enscape window now. We did add one extra render window setting. This is where you can control everything about that render window. So I can change, the title of it. I can change the splash screen. So again, previously I had to put the splash screen in there, restart Enscape, see what it looks like. But now this is where you can change this. You can see exactly what it's looking like. So again, that was a new window that we added.
I will add to that, just for those of you who are not Enscape users and are going into it, but those of you who are, having those settings in there eliminated was that super annoying thing where you would go to click the visual settings and Enscape would go behind Revit, and so you try and flex like the contrast, but you couldn't see Enscape unless you had it on the screen, and it was super frustrating. So thanks for that. That actually solved that issue for me. Thank goodness.
One really cool button when I saw it come out in beta, I was like, this is so cool. It's this show save frame button. So a lot of times what was happening is when we had this off and we click render. So people thought that everything that was in this render window was being rendered, and then they check their final render and they're like, well, some stuff got cropped off. Like, what's going on? Well, that's because it was going off of, it defaults to 1920 by 1080. So this is where your crop regions are. So now I can interactively adjust my shot accordingly. And if I go over here to my visual settings tab, just close it. Yeah, but if I go over here to my visual settings tab and go to the output tab, this is where I can adjust it and see what's going on. So if I need like a custom size, like a 1920 by 1920, like a more vertical one, the crop regions are going to update instantaneously. So I don't have to sit there and render like, oh, I got to move back a little bit. So having that feature right there, or that little button now always turned on when we're doing renderings, that saved us so much time.
Yeah, before so again, you could only see it when you rendered, or there was a button outside. I don't remember. I know you saw it when you rendered, but could you turn it on beforehand? I don't remember.
Nope. So that was
okay. So you only saw it when you click render, and then you'd be like, oh, I gotta stop the render. Yes.
Yep. Got to navigate around real quick. Got to move it back, and then you got to have the render open on one window. Let's move back a little bit. But just having this on now, I can adjust things accordingly. So that was a really cool button that we implemented. A lot of things where you're still adding it inside of Revit, those all stayed the same, like the render image document, the asset library. Same with our upload manager, and we still have the general settings tab. That's still over there. That deals with licensing and performance, and miscellaneous tab like feedback. If you experience a crash or something, send that over to us. Send the log files. That's what'll help you get faster support times. Those log files just come across and help us read what happened during the crash. So those were some of the buttons are laid out now. Should we jump into some of the new features at 3.1?
Yeah. I think we could. Okay. There was Karina asked a question, which you'll probably show throughout this, but she asked about keeping Enscape up to date and one-click updates, and so that process. So maybe walk through a little bit of an example of how the real-time, the connection with Revit and the live updates works. I think that'd be valuable to some folks.
Okay, yeah. So again, we'll delete some people. So I'll just delete some assets, move some things around. So if I go over here, delete some things, or we can change the material type of this. So just showing how fast we can swap out materials. Again, these are materials that live inside of Revit. So let's make it say like a flooring material or something, or just stone. So again, just quickly replacing that. So I can hit apply. We saw how fast it just updated over there for us in real time.
Awesome. So yeah, and I think Karina, thanks for the question. She did mention that it can bog down a model. I think, I guess, the keeping live updates on. Yes, it depending on your computer speed and hardware, right? It will.
Sure.
And so I will say the way I use it typically, is if I know I'm doing wholesale changes, if I'm working on a design, I will pause the live updates. And so there's a button to pause them on the left there. And then once I make a big wholesale change, then I'll just turn them back on and wait for it to update instead of dealing with some of that lag if your computer can't keep up. So
yeah, exactly. Great question.
Yeah. So
all right.
So yeah, thanks, Karina.
Yep.
I guess Rick asked since we're here, we'll ask about it or we'll bring it up. He and Lee Fang asked. She has 3 serious questions. Do you have to ask for question time? No, you can ask throughout. I just may choose to ask them at a certain time. So feel free to ask right now. And then Rick asked about graphic card recommendations. Like one
Great
low
question.
end and one low end and one high end recommendation or something like that. So that's a good question, Rick.
Great.
That is a very important hardware feature. Not to say that the combination of everything. And if you guys didn't see the episode 55 with Buck Davis from BIMbox, I'll post a link to it in the description. But we went deep into some of these hardware questions.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about Enscape, maybe just a quick high and low end sort of recommendation for graphics cards.
Yeah. So our minimum recommendation is a 2 gig card. GeForce cards. We still support Quadro cards as well. Typically GeForce cards work a little bit better just because they're so much faster. But on the high end, if you're getting into VR, we recommend at least an 8 gig video card.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Quadro, GeForce cards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Awesome.
And then in the middle, 6 gig.
Yeah. So 6 gig, 6 gig is always a nice spot for graphics.
Exactly.
Cards. But if you're saying minimum, I like that. A GeForce 2 gig is definitely. You definitely don't want anything less than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
For sure. Awesome. And then Martin asked, is rendering in Enscape done in the cloud?
Nope, it's all done locally on the GPU. So once you kick it from Revit over to Enscape, that's when the GPU picks it up. So all the GPU is doing all the rendering is being done on the GPU.
Awesome. All right, cool. So so let's jump in. Let's jump into some of the 3.1, which when was 3.1 released? Was it August? I'm trying to remember now, or July.
July.
Like,
it's been so long now.
I know, it feels like a long time ago. But it was like sometime in July. So it's been out for a month or two. So if you guys haven't dug into it, now you get to get a sense of it. But there's some really cool stuff. So feel free to do your thing, man. What do you want to show off first?
All right, so we'll leave the 2 biggest features. I'm sure you guys can see those 2 right here. But we'll leave those biggest 2 features for last because we'll talk about those in depth. All right. Mm-hmm. So the first one we're going to talk about is obviously the asset library. We keep getting always new assets. Every new release comes new assets. But with this release, what we did is we introduced some assets called simplified assets. So these are basically low poly models that we can utilize for early stage design. So if I go to the Enscape assets and I scroll down here and I see this tag called simplified. So again, these are all there's no textures on them. They're low poly. So what we can do is we can place a couple of these. So say I have this tree. For those that don't know, if you hit this little 3 buttons down here, you get a couple different options since we're on Revit. Place asset on active work plane. Link Revit family to asset. I use that one a lot. Always talk about the podcast you did, Jeff, where you showed your workflow for that one. Mm-hmm. But we can use this place asset on surface. So I can just pick the surface I want, click it, and now I can place an asset right there. So again, these assets were for early stage design, completely white, and then low poly. So here, let me minimize this so we can see what these are doing. So we have a couple different ones. This is inside my building now. So what I can do, I can simply move that over. So I can just move this over a little bit. There we go, right there. So this really works well too, is if you go to complete white mode. So again, here's one of our simplified assets. So again, it's pretty low poly, completely free of textures. So the trick is if I go to our white mode over here, remove all the textures, early stage design, great for conceptual design as well. And again, we have 64 of those. That's going to be an ever-growing library as well. So we have different types of people, different types of vehicles, a couple of simplified buildings as well. And, some furniture, again, some simplified trees that we can freely place throughout the model. Again, just for early stage conceptions design. That's what these were for.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome. How do those look in Revit orthogonal views, like a elevation or something? Are those looking a little, because of less polys, will they look a little more
So there's
usable in that view, or maybe not? I'm
yeah,
just curious.
no, so it's still gonna look the exact same.
Yeah.
Just a little bit less, just a little bit less topology.
Yeah. But all the longer for sure.
Yep, exactly. So
Jess actually asked a question since we're on the asset library, which I think we have a really easy answer to, and that was introduced at an earlier release. But Jess asked, she has issues with the assets library and how long it takes for them to load when you're scrolling through.
Great question. Great question. And I will say,
I don't think she was planted by Enscape. I think that's a great question. That's a great question.
So how I'm scrolling through these models really, really fast. There's this button down here, this offline assets, Enscape assets. So what you're going to want to do, I cannot stress this enough. Once you check that button, there's going to be a pop-up box that says, where would you like these assets to go? Please create a folder called Enscape assets. Put them anywhere on your computer, but make a folder called Enscape assets. And then you can set that folder to go to that Enscape assets folder. There will be a warning saying whatever's in that folder will be deleted. So you can just imagine if you set your default folder for where those are going to be downloaded to your C drive, you can just see what's going to happen. So that's why it's create an Enscape assets folder, tell that download to go to there. And then all of them will be downloaded to your computer. So that way you can sit there and scroll through all of them really, really fast. Because right now, if you don't have that checked, they're pulling from our cloud server.
Right. Exactly.
Again,
and it does do a good job. I had to switch computers not too long ago, and it does do a good job checking for updates and updating that library if you need to, which is great.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
Exactly. I think in total it's close to 4 gigs worth of.
It's a pretty big download. So don't be on Wi-Fi or on your cell phone or something while you're trying to do it. So awesome.
Don't be on the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be at the free hotel Wi-Fi. Awesome question, Jess. Thanks for that. And then, I mean, I guess there's some great questions on assets, so we might as well stay on it real quick.
All right, yeah. What we got?
Asking about, can you add assets from 3D Max? Is there a workflow available? I'm telling you, I feel like these guys are planted. Are you sure these aren't planted?
Yeah, right.
Enscape people?
Great question. So up here in our custom assets folder, this is where you can sit there and create custom assets. So you mentioned 3ds Max. So this is where if you have an FBX file or like an OBJ file or even a GLTF file, you can export those. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through this create assets. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit that plus button. A separate window is going to pop up. And this is where you're going to import your geometry. So you're going to import that 3D model. So I can hit import geometry, 3D models. I'll just do this one real quick. This was an FBX file of myself, a photogrammetry scan I created myself. So again, this is how we're creating custom assets. So it's going to pop up. It's going to pull the texture of the albedo map. You can scale yourself accordingly. Again, it's in meters. So I've always wanted to be 6 foot. So I'll just set myself at 2 meters to be tall. And then what you can do now is wait for the preview to load up here. So I can hit 5 on my keyboard. That's going to go to top down. I can hit 2. That's going to be front looking. So now what this is saying, it says thumbnail missing. So I'm going to need to generate a thumbnail. So that's what's actually going to show up over here in our custom assets, thumbnail window.
Awesome.
When we're dealing with models from, say, 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, or even if we're downloading from like CG Trader or something, one thing to be cognizant of is there's going to be this warning that pops up that your model is over 20,000 triangles. So again, it's saying this might lead to performance issues. It's still going to let us create those, but it's just saying if you start there and place a bunch of these, you could run into, yeah, exactly. Be ready. You could run into performance issues.
So now the asset generator, this is a question from me. It doesn't do anything to reduce poly counts or triangles when you're bringing them in. It's using the raw geometry. Correct. Or so it's not doing any compressing or anything. Okay.
Nope.
Cool.
So what we're going to do is we're going to hit, save the project. I'm going to tell it where I want it to go. And on the topic of this, all the files that this is creating, if you sit here and copy and say, I can give this asset to Jeff, I can give this to you right now. I can just copy these files and you can put them in your custom assets folder, and then you'll get my custom assets that I created. So that's where we can start sharing Enscape custom assets. So I can hit save, project save now, and I can hit generate asset. It says the asset's generated successfully. Now I'll close this, and now my new asset's going to have a cool little new tag here. So now this is where I can, I can hit my 3 dots again. I'll place asset on surface. going to select my surface I want, and I'm going to place it. And that, again, is placing assets the same exact way, just like we did place assets. But again, this is where you can take, 3D models from 3ds Max, Maya, all the different ones. So
yeah. So what, maybe for folks who are wondering, because someone did ask about file type, what formats can you bring in for the custom assets?
Great question. So we support FBX files, OBJ files, and GLTF files. GLTF files, you can export those from Blender.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
so someone
3ds Max
asked, Jess Carson asked, so thanks for the question, Jess. She asked about SketchUp files. And so, yes, you can, as long as you export them to one of those formats, which you can do in most cases. So,
yep, exactly. Great questions.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I think we can move on. It looks like we beat assets to the death.
All right.
Thanks for the questions, guys. That was great. Awesome. And
absolutely.
Actually, Brad, as he was asking the question, you were showing scanned textured assets. And one thing I will add too is I didn't make a video on it yet, but I did successfully use the Google RIP process from my tutorial last week in Enscape.
Nice.
So the only downfall is your custom assets show just as a block right now. So reference wise, it's kind of challenging, but I was able to do it and even bring the texture in, and it was mapped perfectly. So
yeah. So since you bring that up, that's a really great thing. So if I go back to edit asset real quick, I just didn't do this. We'll let this load back up, but there is a way. So if you hit this placeholder geometry, so what you can do is you can model even a lower poly model and then put that model as a placeholder geometry. So it's not going to show up as a block.
Oh, so I see it. Yeah. So you could automatically have the placeholder geometry show. Got it.
Exactly. You could show it something. So that's why some of our assets look even more simplified than what they actually do. Is because that placeholder geometry is more simplified than what is actually being shown. So that's how you get rid of that block. I just didn't create it. I just didn't have a more simplified version of my little character.
Yeah. I actually brought in the point cloud and then laid it on top of yours for reference. But then nice. I was dealing with a giant poly Enscape asset and a giant point cloud in the Revit file. So it was making that BIM box pump.
Oh yeah,
it sure was. All right,
awesome.
So let's keep going. So that's assets. I think that's pretty much everything. Unless there's anything else you wanted to show with the asset library while we're on it.
Nope. So that was it. Again, we just added some more new ones, but again, for each new release, we're going to get new assets coming out. So that's always something to be on the look for. Check out new ones that we always have going. All right. So the next thing we have is our panorama gallery. So if everybody's familiar with how to create panoramas, you go up here to this 360 button. Our panorama gallery only takes mono panoramas. So this is now where in previous versions, we would have to send individual panoramas to people. So it was like, oh, hey, check out my outside, check out my exterior, check out this room. So we'd have to send them a bunch of different links to it. But now what we can do is we can actually create a full story and send them one link. So you could sit there and create multiple, you could see all the different variations of it. So I have a couple loaded up already, but again, to create a panorama, what you're going to do is you're just going to hit mono panorama, stereo panoramas. That's where you can go to Google Cardboard. So you just go to the location you want, you hit take panorama, that's going to start generating a 360 panorama. And then over in our manage uploads tab here, this is where you're going to see those panoramas. And to get them to create a panorama gallery, you do have to upload them to our cloud server, just like where you would get the QR code features. So once this loads up quick, again, our manage uploads tab, it is project specific. So it's going to pull up all the projects that I've created panoramas from. So here's this one right here. We can see the different ones that I've created. Again, these are already uploaded to the cloud. So if there wasn't one, it was just going to have a blue little arrow that says upload. Real quick, if nobody's tried out the QR code feature, I highly recommend it. Very, very, Jeff, have you tried that before?
I have. Yep.
Yeah. Very, very powerful feature. Love that awesome. Feature. It's probably my favorite feature.
Yeah. It's one of those, we've hacked together various ways of doing this in the past for job sites, especially. And they like the idea of rendering like the finished space and then putting it on a board or something in front of the space under construction. And so, the question was, can we do it virtually? And so for years we've been hacking together all kinds of ways to do it. And so definitely makes it a lot easier.
So I have one pulled up. Should I let somebody scan it real quick?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they should be able to see it right now. If they wanted to. So yeah, if you guys know how to, hopefully everyone knows how to scan a QR code. But if you don't, Google that, because you should know how to do that now. I actually just scanned it myself too.
Yeah. So what's really cool about these is people are starting to put these on a set of construction documents or pursuit papers. Again, because a lot of times if people can't look at a floor plan and see what the space is going to look like in 3D, this is a very powerful way to get something on their phone. It's a cool takeaway for them. Or we're also seeing this be utilized a lot where, new development's going up and they got the big job board outside where it's got a rendering of what the building's going to look like and some information about it. Well, people are starting to put these on those boards and they're just typing like scan me right above it. Yeah. So people in the community can walk by and, scan it with their phone. So it's a cool little takeaway as well.
Yeah. And one of the things, the quality of the rendering is still pretty much maintained, which is good. And in the past, a lot of times the web versions of things always decrease quality a little bit, but I've noticed that the quality is pretty much maintained, which is awesome. And not to mention, if someone's doing it on their phone, having the gyroscope or accelerometer, whatever it is, that is pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So
Hopefully,
I hope everyone...
It looks like some people scanned it, which is awesome. Hopefully you guys all scanned. If not, you can always check out the replay and scan it, or maybe I'll just put the QR code in the blog post or something like that.
All right. So that was a QR code quick. Once we got our panoramas created, so if we go to our Enscape account and we just log in and we go to the Uploads tab, this is where we're going to see our upload management feature. And now we're going to be able to hit this Create Panorama Gallery. So what this is going to do, this is going to take us to a window where we can actually stage our panoramas. So we can assemble them accordingly, and then we hit save, and then we're going to get something that looks like this. So again, previously we only had to send one panorama to a client. Now it's, hey, here's a link to all the different ones I've created that I want you to see. And now I can flip between the two. There we go. So again, it's just as good as a rendering. So again, I can flip between these. I can really freely lay out how I want to give these to our customers. And the really cool thing is if I go back to my Enscape account with my panorama gallery, if I hover over the three buttons, I get the share option here. So now this is where I can simply copy the link, or I could actually type in the person's email that I want to send it to, and they're going to get a link. They just simply click the link, and then they're going to be taken to this right here on what we can see here. Awesome. So again, that was a big thing with 3.1 as well.
Yeah, being able to manage it after the fact was huge, because some of the ways we hacked it before was finding that link and generating our own QR codes or whatever. Somebody did ask before we move on about the rendering. First of all, everyone likes the rendering in the QR code. Anyone who did it seems awesome about it, which is awesome. It is a great looking rendering. They asked about the QR code panoramic is the context in HDRI sky. Or background, I guess, the context.
Yep. So that background in there, that is an HDRI image. So that is actually one that came with Enscape. So if you go over to our visual settings tab and you go to the sky tab, if you hit the horizon, this is where you get the option for those different ones. So we can see there's what that one looks like in the background there. So we have a couple different ones.
Which all look great, and you can do your own. You can bring your own in as well. I'll add that.
Exactly. Yeah. So Dan Stein actually wrote a really, really great article on how to create your own custom skyboxes. So that's on our blog. I can get a link and then send that to you, Jeff.
Yep. I'll put it in the description on YouTube and the blog post tomorrow, so everyone can go to that. But yeah, the default ones are great, and the sky always looks really good if you're not looking at the horizon. But if you are looking at the horizon and you want to HDR, you can use. I've used, purchased HDRs, eyes, and whatnot. So
exactly. And there's a couple of free websites out there where you can, like you said, you can go get some free and paid ones that look really, really good as well too. So awesome. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah. And I think Karina asked about walkthroughs with the panos, and I think you kind of showed that with the project base. I think what she's asking is there a way in the view to click between views? It sounds like right now it's just the
great.
Yeah,
great question
on the bottom that you showed, right?
Yep, great question. That is definitely something that our team is exploring the possibilities of. I just don't have an exact ETA on if or when, but again, that is definitely something that has been heavily requested. We find great value in it, so we hear you.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think we need to jump into, because wait, go back to this view a little bit. Make this large. make this larger, and go to a little angle view on that brick so everyone can see the materials on that gray brick right there. There we go. So I think it's time. I think it's about time.
You think it's time?
Yeah, I think it's time, because we keep staring at this brick and I can't handle it. It looks so good. So and I do have to tell a story first for anyone. Most people here have probably followed the blog, I would imagine. If not, check out the revitkid.com and go in the back. But if you search PBR materials, you'll see I posted a big actually I'll post it in the chat right now and in the description. I did this big old post on how to use PBR materials in Revit, with Enscape being the rendering engine. And if you read, and it's kind of funny, going full circle, the first paragraph of that was inspired by a presentation from Josh Radle. So thanks, Josh, for inspiring that post. But materials is something that, and if you go through that, it's sort of more along the lines of using the PBR materials in Revit, and getting the most out of those. And me, I just refuse to render natively in Revit anymore. I can't remember the last time I hit the teapot. I just can't remember. And so I was using Enscape in that. And that got us to a point. If you watch that tutorial, you'll see you definitely get quite a bit of bump and textures, but there's limitations. Anyone who's used Revit and understands the limitations of the material editor in Revit, there's limitations. And so as a segue into the big release with 3.1, or the big feature, the materials editor, I think anyone who's been frustrated with not being able to use displacement maps and AO and all of these things that you're used to using in other render programs, I guess, and you could speak for Enscape on this point, I guess they just couldn't do it within the realm of Revit's freaking material editor to some extent. Yeah. So I'll let that be the segue into you introducing 3.1's material editor, and you can do the Enscape side of it. But that's my context on what it is. But I do have to say I'm super impressed with it. So with that being said, why don't you show everyone what it is I'm talking about here?
All right. So like you said, really big feature is we now have our own material library. So now this will play into the material editor here. So this is the first of its kind for us here. Previously, we were just taking all the materials, again, straight from Revit. So again, or if we created them separately, but again, that all had to be put inside of Revit. But now we have our own material library. So currently we have 244 materials to start with. Again, just like our asset library, this is going to be an ever-growing library. So each new release, we're going to get some new materials with it. We have them broken out by different types of brick, concrete, glass, woods. We see how I have this one highlight over here, and it's got a little star. This is where I can favorite materials. So again, if I start to utilize ones that I really, really like, this is where I can favorite them right here. One thing to be aware of is if we're working on shared projects, set this folder to the project's location. So anytime you import selection, anytime you import these materials, those are going to be put into the project of that shared project. So again, that's one little thing to kind of keep in the back of your head. All right. So now how do we get these materials?
Folder, let me just reiterate that. So this material folder needs to move with the Revit project file in theory.
Correct. Yep.
If you're using these materials. Got it.
Exactly. Yep. So again, you just go down to the little gear icon, set the folder to where you need to go. And again, we have a couple little helpful reminders in case you forget. So now how do I get this inside of Revit? So I'm going to click the one I want. I'm going to hit import selection. And yes, I can actually select multiple different ones. So this is actually going to put this into our project. We can see here that it turned green. So green is good. That means it imported successfully. All right. So now here's where the fun happens. So if I go over to the edit type, if I go to the material of this, so now this is where this gets a little, so say I have my material scheduling correctly. I have my naming convention set up exactly how I want. Everything on the back end is working how I need it to, but I want to just make the appearance look better. And I have surface patterns set up and everything like that I don't want to mess with. Enscape just goes off the appearance tab. So these materials, if I were to just simply assign this new material, it would overwrite the naming path. It would overwrite my surface patterns and all that stuff. But if I don't want to do that, what I can do is if I go over here to our asset library, I go to document assets, and I go to that brick material. So this brick 03, if I just hit this, replace this current asset and editor, this is just going to replace just the appearance path. It's not going to mess with the surface patterns. It's not going to mess with the identity or anything like that. It's literally just going to take the materials and the material properties and put it in the appearance path. Because by default, Enscape just goes off the appearance path. There is a way to switch it in the general settings tab to the graphics tab, but we want to make pretty pictures. So that's why we utilize textures and from the appearance path. So if I hit apply and I hit okay, go through Revit's 5 steps of hitting okay, because yes, I actually want to do this. So now we can see what this new Enscape material is looking like on my building here. So we can see.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly. So back in the Revit Material Editor, what we can see here is it gave us the different material maps that come with it. So we got the albedo map, which is just the color of the image. We have the roughness map, where that's controlling the surface imperfections. So black is shiny, white is diffuse, and that's where you can really get the fine details of that. And then we can see here, we get the normal map with it as well. So that's what we got right here. So that's a little bit about the material library. Do we have any questions on that?
Not yet. Someone said nice work on the materials.
I appreciate it.
And then Lee asked if this material editor is also available in SketchUp. And I responded to that and said it's the same one that was always available in SketchUp, right?
Yep.
That's pretty much
exactly.
what it was.
Yep. No, so exactly. So
for the longest time, it was always, I always got emails. It's like, well, why can't we have the same one as SketchUp? I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, yeah, exactly. Like I use SketchUp too, and everything was just so much easier. So on the topic of the material editor, finally, Revit was the last one of all the software that we support to get the Enscape material editor. So now this is really beneficial for a lot of different reasons. So if I hit the Enscape material editor, one thing to note is this is going to take all the materials that are already set up on my Revit project, but it has to be a generic material. So it has
to start as the generic asset type. So that
exactly
way you have
correct.
Got it. So if you make a custom material from scratch and you want to use it in here without importing from Enscape, it has to be. You can't use glazing blue or whatever, because then you won't have all those things. Got it. Good
exactly. So it has to be a generic type. So that's one other thing. Like if somebody has a different type and they're not seeing it, they're like, well, what's going on? Why is it not seeing? If you just go up, right click generic, duplicate as generic, then it pops up. But now where this becomes really, really powerful is now we just saw in Revit how I had to click OK 4 different times to accept the changes.
Right.
But now whatever I'm doing inside of here, I can see it instantaneously. So say, for instance, I need to tint the color. So if I hit red tint, it updates instantaneously for me. If I need to adjust the displacement map of this, again, previously in the material editor of Revit, I had to adjust it to, was it Jeff, like over 4 something?
And it wasn't, I wouldn't even call it displacement. I mean, it was just,
it was the bump map
uber
where we
bump,
had to trick.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Once you got to a certain number, it just looked weird because, the everything would be the same depth, right? You didn't get the depth of field difference, which is where displacement really helps, right? It's like on this brick, a perfect example is the face versus the recess, right? If you use the bump, the recesses would be as deep as the face to some extent. Once you get to a certain point.
Exactly, because a bump map, it looks really good when you're looking straight on it, but when you go at an angle like this, it's not. It's going to lose its 3D effect. So that's why this displacement map is going to give the illusion that's that 3D effect. So now what I can do is I can slide this left and right to get the desired result I'm looking for here. So again, that's where this is really, really powerful. Another really cool thing about using this material editor, if we had multiple material maps set up in Revit, remember how we had to adjust the size for each individual map? Now, if we just do, let's say just 2x2, it's going to update that for all my different material maps. So now I only have to do it once. So
now, is that updating the Revit appearance tab? All the stuff work you're doing here?
Yep. So great question. So I don't have to worry about going back and forth and doing this. So if I hit close real quick and I go back to, we'll let it complete the change. If I go back to edit type, go find where that is. If I go back to the appearance tab, we can see here, hey, my tint color changed just like I did it in the material editor. If I go to the size of my material, the size is updated accordingly. So again, if I did anything inside of the material editor in Revit, it would all push back to Enscape's material editor. So again, that's where we can enjoy this bi-directional link now going on. So we can get the visualization look that we're going for just by sliding things left and right.
So I'm curious, because I've been using this for a month or so. At Enscape, what do you guys like? What would you see as the preferred workflow then? Would it be like if you know most of your materials are going to be custom, right? And so you're building your model, you're creating materials. Would you just make an asset for it in Revit and then do all of the editing to it in Enscape, in the Enscape Material Editor? Like instead of applying all the textures and dealing with the workflow of adding bumps and images and stuff. If you weren't pulling from the Enscape library, for example,
sure.
Would it be make all your materials, then jump into the Enscape editor and then do your appearance tab essentially? Is that the workflow you think would make sense?
No, exactly, because we still have to make sure they're all scheduling correctly.
Right.
Surface patterns.
And if you have realistic views or something, right, you still want it to look that way, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you can do is you can just go into Revit, new material, get it how it's supposed to be on the back end. And for further visualization, that's where you can go into the material editor and you can start adding in your own materials. So say like this, I could show you guys how to do that real quick. So what material is on here? We have this pavement 11. So if I go over here to this pavement 11, I don't have this pavement 11.
Maybe it doesn't have a material asset, or maybe the material asset's called something different, or the appearance asset's called something different. Who knows?
We can just mess with the brick again. But so for the brick, what I can do, I can just switch this back to white. And if I need to add a custom material to that, I'll just sit here and remove these and then go find my own texture library now, where these are custom materials I've either created with Substance Alchemist, or say I found them. So what I can do is I can go over here to bricks, take the color of the brick as well. Again, now that's going to start updating for me. Again, so we can see how fast that is. I can take the height map again I can use the displacement map for this one, toggle that to a displacement map. And now we're going to really get that nice displacement. Same with the reflections. We can use the roughness map for that. Again, so that's how I can start flipping out materials. And what's really, really cool now is once this loads, if I hover over the three icons, what I can do is I can hit export material package. So now this is where this will export this Enscape ready material as a nice map package file. And now, Jeff, I could give this to you. You could hit import and you'll get exactly. Yeah. So that's how we can start creating our company library of custom materials.
Now, because this is now also in theory linked to the Revit appearance tab and Revit materials. So are you keeping these and you're keeping a material folder, and then you're having to, just like custom materials in Revit, you have to point Revit to that folder?
Yep, exactly. So you can use
render files, whatever, right? You have to repoint it. Okay. So exactly. So that part is still the same. You're basically your Enscape materials browser or editor is essentially not replacing, but it's like almost like a new version of the appearance tab. Right? It's like
exactly. Yep.
which is welcome. It's welcome.
Exactly. It's a lot easier way to utilize to mess with our materials. So the next thing I want to show you about this material editor. So the one that is on this is this wood facet vertical. So remember trying to add a video texture? We had to write a script inside of the material identity tab. Oh, yeah. So now if I go over here to our wood facet vertical. So now what we're going to do here is I'm going to remove the materials on this, and then I'm simply just going to find my movie I want. And I'm literally just going to drag and drop that MP4 file into the albedo map of my material. And now I can go in here, I can scale this how I need to. So we can say like 15 by 15. And now I can get my movie playing. So it's a lot easier way to get movies inside of Enscape just by doing that. Because again, it replaces the need to edit the identity tab, write a custom script. And now I can do that. Under the type tab, this is where we have the different types of materials that Enscape supports. So this was a new one. If I need to turn it to a self-illumination material, now I can have that material be emitting light.
Nice. No neon red Revit starting point thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. But again, too, like this all pushes back to Revit. So now if I go back to
glow,
exactly. So I'll get the self illumination parameter now back inside of Revit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we can really enjoy this nice bi-directional live link between the two.
Awesome. Someone asked just before we continue with the materials, because this is sort of a general, everything you're doing has been in metric. And I guess the question is kind of, is it, I mean, they keep asking, can you change it? But is it metrics just because your sample file is metric? Is Enscape pulling from that? Or is that,
yeah,
or is that just a setting in Enscape? I don't remember.
That's just a setting in Enscape. Yeah, it's all metric. Mm-hmm. So but that is definitely something that our team is looking at, a way to switch it over to not metric. So again, that's that is, just based on the region that you're in. So that's something they're looking at. Again, no ETA on if or when, but yeah, we hear you on that one.
That's all right. We could all learning metrics, not a bad thing.
Exactly. So awesome. Yeah, so that was the material editor again. Like also for the grass features. Looking over here on the left-hand side, you can now easily identify what different types of materials are. So this one's a grass type. So I have some grass up on top of my building here. Yep. So now, remember, we had to call the material grass and Enscape, and then we had to adjust some things.
Or now tall grass or medium grass.
Or wild grass.
That was the only way to control the grass, right, was by the name.
Yep, exactly. And same with water. But now what I can do, I can just call it a material, go up to the type, switch it to grass, and now I have the different parameters in here to slide it left and right, get the grass adjusting. Same with the height variation. I can add my textures to there. Again, a lot easier way to further visualize the model. And if I need to, I can switch this to water. So now I can have like a pool on top of my building here. So again,
that's awesome.
Really cool.
Maybe because people, there were a couple questions about the grass. Maybe just show real quick, slide some of the sliders for the grass to show people, because I was impressed with, now that we have control. I mean, of course, it existed in SketchUp for any of the SketchUp users, but you have you have full control, just like you would in like a Lumion or a Twin Motion now.
Exactly.
Of the wildness, the height, and I believe the albedo changes it too, right? If you put a different texture behind it, it'll affect the coloring.
Exactly. Yeah. So if we say need to do like a football stadium or something where we need the grass going up, you would just simply add a texture into there. So again, I believe I have a grass type. So if I go to Earth, or Enscape has its own grass materials as well that we can sit there and utilize. So you can use ours, or if you have a custom logo or something, you can definitely throw that in as well. But again, just sliding things left and right, you can change the height variation. So we can see what that's doing here. We can adjust the height if we need to as well. We can give it a tint color. But again, it's that easy now to mess with the grass. Yeah. Just by sliding things left and right.
Yeah, and it renders really nice, by the way, for those people.
Exactly.
It does render really nice. Somebody had a question, which I think you kind of showed, but you showed scaling. But what about like rotating and whatnot with the albedo and the texture? So if you wanted to rotate the albedo similar in Revit, it looks like you have a setting right there.
Yep. Exactly. So if you go up here and you click in the albedo map, if you just go into rotation, you can rotate it to
and that, of
however
course,
you need.
Push to Revit.
Correct. Yep.
As well. So
exactly correct.
Question. I forgot who it was. Q something. Thanks for the question.
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Everyone keeps asking about metric to feet. It's us, us Americans get so offended when we see metric, and you can imagine like literally the rest of the world uses it except for us. And imagine how they feel whenever I'm using like 1/32 of an inch or something like that.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
Exactly.
Awesome. No, that's great.
Yeah, and real quick, if you want to try out or see what all of our Enscape materials look like, if you go to our website and you go to enscape3d.com, free sample projects, if you scroll down, you can actually try this project that I'm working on here, showing you. That's right here. Or if you scroll down, you can actually get an executable file of what each of those different materials look like inside of Enscape.
Yep.
So if you
I'll put a link to these downloads, but the sample files are great, and you can see what's in them here. And there's old ones too that are still worth lots of great to look at for Enscape, some of the older models.
Oh, exactly.
That's awesome. So that's just a really cool file. I like the setup with the sphere and the angled walls.
Exactly. Yeah. Kai and our AE team lead Norbert, they created this. So again, big shout out to those guys for putting this together. It looks awesome. Amazing.
Somebody had a question about IES data and the light and artificial lighting, and does Enscape. And I guess this is probably perfect because isn't there a sample file for lighting too?
Yeah, exactly.
So the question is, does Enscape accept IES information?
Yep. No, great question. That's all dictated on the Revit side. So if you just use Revit lights and you put IES profiles in there, we'll fully respect those as well. You could also try out our sample project, Jeff, like you mentioned, IES Light Gallery. Again, download the Revit project
great one
file.
To look at if you're someone who's not, if you're someone like me who's maybe a lot of lighting designer, but you kind of the look you want to look for. I've used that file before to sort of just look around and be like, this is the scallop sort of look that I want to see. Someone did mention the grass can get a little messy at sidewalks, and yeah, I mean, to be fair, any program I've ever used with artificial grass like this, can get messy at sidewalks and overlaps. Yeah, so definitely don't want to zoom in too close to that stuff.
Exactly. Awesome. So that's. Should I talk about some of the stuff that's underneath the hood?
Yeah, let's do it. So I mean, it seems like the questions are slowing down with the 3.1 stuff. So yeah, so let's chat a little bit about what you can talk about for future development.
Gotcha. Yeah. So if you go to our website and you go to Enscape3D.com, you go to features, you can see what we can publicly talk about that's coming out for our new features. Biggest one that we're going to have is you can actually try out the 3.2 beta version if you go to our forum. So if you go to Enscape 3D forum, again, try this out. Love to get you guys' feedback on this. If you go to this preview version right here, this is where you can get access to try this out. But so one of the big features that we're going to have is now you will have the ability to, inside of the Enscape render window, to place Enscape assets. So because for the whole time Enscape's been around, it's literally dictated by everything coming from the design application.
Right.
So you can't do anything inside the Enscape render window. But now you'll be able to place Enscape assets inside of the Enscape render window. And once you hit apply changes, those will all push back to Revit. So now,
it's a little less clunky. The placement's faster, but then I bet the apply changes is still like a little bit of a wait.
A little bit, but yeah. So there'd be the ability, so now it's not like, okay, I placed them over here. Okay, where's that in my Revit project? Now you can see this back.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. And so then we're going to so next up is we'll get the ability to do batch rendering of panoramas. So you can set up different panoramas that you want or different views, batch render all those at once. It's been a big feature. Another really, really cool one that we're pushing out is, so when you create the panoramas, you get the QR codes, it's basically static. So that's how that model was at that time. But obviously we're going to update the model. So then we have to regenerate it. But now what we're going to do is there's going to be a button where we can hit update existing. So now you can still keep the same QR code. You can still keep the same link. You just regenerate the panorama, and that QR code and link are going to be changed with the new updated changes to the model. So that's a really big one coming out. Yeah. So that one's really cool. We're going to get some really cool sustainability theme content as well. And for our Vectorworks users, we're going to get full Vectorworks 2022 support. So those are some of the cool things that I can talk about, again, because they're public. So
yeah.
Yep. Some things that we did do underneath the hood were we implemented NVIDIA DLSS, and then we did implement ray trace sun shadows. So for those, you do need RTX capable cards, and you can find those in the general settings tab under hardware, under rendering, and then RTX features. So again, for those that don't know what DLSS is, that's NVIDIA's deep learning super sampling AI technology. I can show you guys what that's doing underneath the hood here. So this is DLSS off, and then this is with DLSS on. So we can see what these two are doing here. So basically it's allowing Enscape to render internally at a lower quality. And then NVIDIA DLSS is the AI technology is filling in those gaps and filling in those blanks with the missing pixels that it's not rendering. So this speeds up videos, this speeds up walkthroughs and things like that. So again, this really, really powerful feature for us to implement. If you would like to get a lot more in depth, Dan Stein wrote a really, really good article about where he goes into a pretty good deep dive of how and what DLSS is. And he gets into talking about his experience with performance. Again, he's getting 2 times faster at 4K, 3 times faster on 1440 for 8K displays. And then Enscape or NVIDIA also wrote up a very, very good article on basically even more in depth about this technology. So that was something underneath the hood. We also implemented a thing called ray trace sun shadows. So this was previously ray tracing has always been a thing at Enscape, but previously what we were doing was we were taking a silhouette of the object and then projecting that onto the surface of the object. Well, now what we're doing is we're actually shooting rays of light from the sun, from Enscape's sun, and it's hitting anything that's surface context. And now we're going to get these more accurate shadows. So we're going to get sharper, crisper shadows. You won't see these when you're walking through. That's why I'm showing you still renderings right now. You will see them though if you stop moving for a second and let Enscape just sit. Right. Then it'll kick on. But again, we could see a couple of examples. So that's RTX off. So RTX off, RTX on. So we can see sharper, crisper shadows, a lot cleaner. So again, helping us get a more photorealistic rendering. So again, those were some things that went underneath the hood with 3.1
and for those, I mean, obviously if they want to dig down deeper,
exactly.
Check out all those articles. But odds are if you have RTX compatible cards, exactly, then you probably know what it is. I mean, just maybe not. I don't know, we'll see. So, but that's awesome. Awesome.
Exactly.
All right, I think that's it for the questions, which is awesome.
Okay, perfect. I want to be respectful of time too.
Yeah. People are still hanging out. I will say there's one last question that I think is a good question that you could probably let us know with, which is will Enscape ever have animations as in animated objects?
Great question. That is probably one of our most heavily requested features. Again, that is something our team is looking at. But again, no if or when yet. But again, we hear you. Even the ability for like animated FBX files. That is also something that's just for simple for people just sitting there swaying or just doing something. Just again, that's all something the team is aware of the big demand for. So
I mean, I can imagine the challenge, but I know it is a big wish list item, and it's been for quite some time. The foliage movement is nice, but that again that only does so much, right? To me, the foliage movement is almost more for the user feeling more realistic than anything else.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Same with the trees.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, I think that's it. I think we're gonna wrap it up tonight. Josh, thank you for joining us. This was awesome. Dude. Hopefully you guys joining us today and watching this in the future gain some knowledge on what 3.1 is. The biggest thing that I wanted to talk about was what we did talk about, which is the material advancements and then how to use it. I mean, I think similar to when Revit changed the material editor 13 times, and everyone tried to figure out when it was 2 windows, 1 window, appearance assets, all that stuff. I think people are still honestly figuring that out. That can be a challenging thing to understand, the whole assets versus materials versus appearance, whatever. So I can see why it's a challenge. So hopefully, and I think you did a great job. And I think that was my goal, was to make sure that people understood how it worked and then where the power is. And you're getting true displacement maps and you're using true scan materials that you would in any other rendering program inside of Revit, which is phenomenal. So
exactly.
Josh,
thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Any final last words? Any I guess any way people can reach out to you?
So we have a
Go ahead.
So we have a contact form on our website where you can definitely reach out to us if you have questions. Perfect. Or you guys can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, always on LinkedIn. If you go to our contact form, that's a great way to reach out to us as well. Or definitely reach out through the forum. Forum is a really, really great place to, gain industry knowledge. Phil Reed's always on there, offering extremely invaluable advice. So again, that's really, really helpful as well too. So awesome. Last up though, next week, actually, we do have our own Enscape conference called called Envision. So if you guys haven't yet checked it out, again, that's next week, 20th to 29th. highly recommend it. We're getting people from all over the world, a lot of really well-known industry speakers to teach classes on Enscape and some of the really cool workflows. I'll be teaching a class as well on materials. So if you guys want to go farther with materials, check that out.
Awesome.
But again, definitely check out
so that's a virtual conference next week, September 28th and 29th. So if you guys are
free to register.
Yes, if you guys are interested in the conference, head on over to Enscape 3D and check it out. There's a bar on the top, and if you wanna try out Enscape and you haven't done so far, head on over to enscape.bimafterdark.com so that you can download the free trial from there, and they know that you saw it here. Josh, again, thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having us.
We'll have to come you back on 3.2 or
absolutely.
3.3 or the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really dig in deep, right?
Absolutely. Right. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. I'll see you next week, same time, different topic. You guys are amazing, and feel free to reach out. Subscribe here on YouTube. We're actually I don't even know, 3,000 or 4,000 short of 50,000 subscribers. So let's try and get ourselves there.
Hit that subscribe button.
Subscribe, and if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, then you will know when we go live if you don't get all the other reminders I give you. So thanks for joining us, guys. You're amazing. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. Have a great weekend.
All right. Enjoy your night, guys.